I'm Jerry from Boston, Massachusetts. Eric is on assignment. This is Another Sunday Podcast. This has got to be one of the strangest podcasts that I've ever done. I'm doing this without a co-host. Eric is on assignment down in Birmingham, Alabama, and he will be joining us again in the future. And Eric, you are missed greatly. Not used to soloing, but we're going to give it a shot. We do have a guest with us, and our guest on this episode has been associated with youth baseball for 52 years. He's been a player, coach, manager, and umpire. He's been a sports writer. He's been a board member and a president. For the last 50 years, he's coached at every level from the minor league to American Legion. He's the author of a history of the Lynn City Series book about the Little League Series in Lynn, Massachusetts. He's a huge fan of the Boston Red Sox and Hall of Famer Carl Yastrzemski. In fact, he may even tell us a little story about an encounter he had with the baseball great. We're going to ask him to talk about some other stories that he has had with some encounters with some other Major League Baseball players over the years. Please welcome to the podcast, Paul Hartford. Hello, Paul. Welcome.
Hello, Jerry. Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you for agreeing to join us here.
You're welcome. I have a question before we start.
Sure.
Is the truth that Eric's not here because he's a Yankees fan?
I don't think so. I don't believe I've ever heard him mention the Yankees, but that's a good question. I'm going to have to ask him the next time we talk. He's actually down in Birmingham. He's in a master's program down there for college, and he is kind of tied up. So the schedule that we had to have you on the air and him here just didn't work out, so he gave me his blessing, and he said apologies and regrets. But I'll definitely ask him if he's a Red Sox. I mean, if he's a Yankees fan. We do have a lot of Yankees fans actually out there. And before I get started, I want to throw a shout out to all of our listeners. Thank you so much. Our listenership is growing from all over the world. So thank you. And folks, if you have a comment or you have a suggestion, or if you want to be on the show, or if you know somebody that's got an interesting story that will be on the show, please let us know. You can send us an email at itsanothersunday.podcast@gmail.com. Perhaps, Paul, tonight we can actually share some funny stories with our audience of the time that you and I have tried to attend a Red Sox game. and I don't think we're ever allowed to travel to Red Sox games together again. And again, for the listeners that have heard me refer to me as Disaster Jerry, you'll hear another story. So, anyways, Paul, thank you so much again for joining us. Let's dive right into this, the history of the Lynn City Series, the Lynn, Massachusetts City Series book that you had written. Tell us a little bit about the book and why you wrote it and your 52 years in the business.
Well, the concept of the book, in Lynn, they have many different leagues. So they take the champion of each league at the end of the year, and they have a tournament to see who is the best team in the city of Lynn is. It started in 1951 when there were just 2 leagues. And then it's grown as it is now to include 5 teams. It's been up to as many as 7 teams throughout the years. And about the year 2000, the concept changed to where during this regular tournament, if you flipped a coin and if you won the coin toss, your team would play at your home field. The year 2000, they decided to host it all at one field. So the year I wrote the first book, because there's actually been 2 books, the 2015 season, my league that I was currently coaching in was hosting the tournament. So I thought an idea for a fundraiser for our league was if I was to put the information together in a book of all the teams that have won the City Series or played in the City Series, the scores of the games, I thought we could sell it as a fundraiser. So I started about 8 months before the City Series was going to start. I spent hours upon hours upon hours in the library, not realizing how long this was going to take. But the end result was that we had a book that I undersold because we were just trying to raise some money, and basically all it did was cost my time. that listed every winner of the City Series, the teams that played in the City Series, the names of the managers and coaches, and the scores of every game. And the book was quite popular. We sold a lot of copies, but a lot of the requests I had from parents were, is my kid's name in it? Or the people that were buying it that played in the City Series back then, is my name in it? So the very next year, my team was going to host, my league was hosting the City Series once again. So people were asking for it. So I went to the trouble of going back to the library and figured that I will go research every single name and I'll put all the names in the book, not knowing that this would take me as long as it did, because I said, well, I know when I first did the book, I had an idea from like 1970 on when the City Series was played. But prior to that, I didn't know. So it was all research for me as to what dates the games were played. So I figured, well, I've got the dates now. It should be easy to find. But what I didn't realize is to find every player's name, I had to go through every single story that was ever written in any paper.
I'm looking at a copy of that book that you're referring to, The History of the Lynn City Series, 1951 to 2016. I'll tell you what. I mean, this is very well put together. It has photos. It has statistics. It has names. I mean, how long did it take you to put this together? Because this looks like it was an undertaking.
It took 6 months to research and another 2 months to actually type it up and put it together. At 3,986 players' names listed that I had to type in. And with the help of a friend of mine who was actually our league president, Dave Dorgan, at the time, he was able to scan the photos that I was basically taking from microfiche, and he was able to lighten them up so that they could get sent into the printer and actually look decent. There are some that aren't in very good quality, but it's the best you could do when you're just making a copy of a picture in a newspaper. But we figured a bad picture was better than no picture. And the end result was people loved being able to see their names in the book or pictures of their teams. So it was
it's incredible. And I don't know that I would call these these bad pictures. Some of these obviously are older pictures from newspapers that were scanned into a black and white book. But the names are certainly there. You've outlined them very well by typing them in. In fact, there's a picture here of you. What year is this?
I believe that one that you're looking at is probably 1983.
Okay.
Yeah, the funny thing about the book is that my brother's name is in it with his picture. My father's is in there, and I'm
incredible. It's a great book. It's and certainly use it as a for a fundraiser. I'm sure there are a lot of these folks here that were around in some of these years that would love to have a copy of this book and look up their name and their records and all the different information you have in here. You said that this book was still available for purchase, right? And the funds were going to the City Series?
They actually go to the Lynn Shore League that I was actually involved with the year that we were hosting the tournament that the book came out. The smallest league in the city, so quite, honestly, it's the poorest league in the city.
Mm-hmm.
So any funds that I get, none of it went to me. Every single penny went directly to Lynn Shore Little League.
And if folks are interested in purchasing a copy, is there a way they can do this?
Sure, they can send me an email. I don't know if I can give you my email address. It's
Sure.
In the book. It's actually PHYAZ 08 at AOL.com, and they email me. Basically, the cost of the book is $15. I've shipped it all over to many different places. The average shipping cost has been about $6 or $7 that I ask the person to cover as well, so that way all the profit can still go to Lynn Shore Little League.
Again, the email address is PHYAZ08 at AOL.com. Let me do it right. PHYAZ08, PHYAZ08 at AOL.com. It's a great book if you're just curious about history of the Lynn City League, City Series League, rather, and you want to see some pictures if you're a listener and you're a part of that league here in Massachusetts. It's a great book. Great job on this book. 3,000 and something names.
3,986, and I've gotten a lot of emails from people that have picked up the book or that someone has sent it to them, and they just can't believe that someone went to the trouble to do this, and they brought back all the memories. Because to be honest with you, when you play in the City Series, it's something that they never stop talking about. I have kids that I coached in 1983. My team made it to the finals, and we lost the last game. And to this day, players text me saying, "Coach, we should have won that game."
1983.
1983.
That's incredible. Well, great job. And before we end our episode today, we'll remind people again of the email address and how they can order the book. We'll also put this email address in the link for the podcast and the description of the book if people want to click on that, and they can send you an email right off the episode. So, segueing from the email address into this next story, as I know, and now everybody listening is going to know, you are a huge fan of Carl Yastrzemski. And you actually have some Yastrzemski story or stories that you can share with us. Why Carl Yastrzemski?
Well, I was born in August, so that month is 8. So the Red Sox number 8 was Carl Yastrzemski, who was also born in August. His year that he started playing was the year I was born. So we just naturally had a connection. His birthday was just 5 days after mine. Number 8, born in August.
Okay.
Played the same year I was born. It was meant to be.
So it was originally based on the number, not on the fact that this guy was a great player and he just happened to be a great player. This could have been Jerry DeVille in number 8, who really stunk at playing baseball, and you would have attempted to become a fan of mine. No, that's great. So you've actually met Carl Yastrzemski. Tell us that story.
I actually have, and beside that, I was the only one back in the day when I was a child that could spell his last name too. But the first time I met Yaz was actually in Lynn. I was 10 years old. He came to Stop and Shop to do an autograph signing, and it was a cold, rainy day, and he was late, and we were out in line, and finally when he showed up, he was 3 hours late. So when you finally get to the line, they're just trying to rush you, and I had 2 baseballs for him to sign. And when he signed them, I said to him, "Hit a home run for me tonight and on my birthday." And then they're just throwing me out of line. So that was my first encounter with Carl Yastrzemski. So that night, it clears up. He gets up. Very first pitch he sees, he hits a home run. So now my 10-year-old self is convinced that he did that because I asked him to. So I spent the rest of the night being excited as could be that Carl Yastrzemski did that for me. But then the next day, from April 11th on, I was depressed because I realized that I never told him when my birthday was. So,
okay.
So 4 months later, his first at bat on my birthday, first pitch he sees, he hits a home run. So now I'm convinced that I don't know how he did it, but somehow he knew when my birthday was. He must have asked somebody, and he hit a home run for me. So my mother said that I could barely fit out of a room because Yastrzemski hit 2 home runs when I asked him to. So
you said out of the room. Is that what you said?
Yes, I couldn't get my head through a door.
Through a door, okay. Yeah. Just want to make sure you didn't say womb.
No, yeah, I couldn't get out of a door, so just head was too big.
And this was, and you were 10?
I was 10 years old.
Okay.
So we can flash forward 20 years later, and I am at a card show that Yaz is going to be signing autographs at. And I happen to know the person that ran the show, so I'm in line, and Yaz can see me, and he can see my arm full of stuff, and he says to the guy that's running it, who's that guy? Is he like a guy that's just going to sell all that stuff? And the owner of the thing says to Yaz, "Oh no, he is fanatic about you. Ask him anything, he knows it about you." So a couple of people are ahead of me because I couldn't push him out of the way. And I finally get up to him, and I put my first thing down for him to sign. And he looks up at me and says, "I hear you know a lot about me." And I said, "Well, yeah." And he goes, "Can you tell me when I got my 3,000th hit?" I said, "Well, of course, September 12th, 1979, off of Jim Beattie. It was a base hit into right field. Reggie Jackson picked up the ball, came in and gave you a hug." He goes, "Okay, how about my 400th home run?" I said, "Oh, that's easy." I said, "August 26th, 1979. And it was off Mike Morgan. You hit it into the right field bullpen in Fenway Park." And so then he looks at me again and he says, "When was I born?" I said, "August 22nd, 1939. And then all of a sudden he stopped talking to me. And at the time, he was looking at a 1967 Life magazine. And in it, there was a story about him and his family. And he looks up at me and he sees my arm full of stuff. And he says, "You have more things of me than I do. He goes, but of all the things I wish I had this. And I said, well, then take it. It's yours. And he looked up at me and he said, really? I said, absolutely. I said, for all the joy that you have given me. I said, in fact, I met you 21 years ago, and was when you came to Lynn at Stop and Shop for an autograph session. And I said, and that night I asked you to hit a home run for me that night and on my birthday. I said, but I forgot to tell you when my birthday was. He looked up at me and said, you're the kid I had to track down whose birthday it was?
He was he was unbelievable with the fans. He was so down to earth, friendly. He didn't mind sticking around and signing stuff. I mean, he just had that personality, which is, I don't want to say it's rare today, but it kind of is. You know, back in the days, the 70s and the 80s when these guys played, he was just a wonderful guy, and he did so much for the city.
Right. Well, I think today's now it's all big business, and they all know that they can make some money selling it. Where back then they were just happy to have fans.
Yeah, no, that's true. So you said it was September 12th, 1979.
Yes.
It's when he hit his 3,000th, and he
3,000th hit.
He hit it off who?
Jim Beattie.
So just for the listeners, I've actually fact-checked this guy, and he's absolutely right. It was September 12th, 1979, Jim Beattie. So I've learned over the last 5 years, do not doubt, when it comes to Kacey Shremski or baseball in general, do not doubt Paul, because he knows his baseball. So there's a number of other encounters that you have had with other either players or managers or people surrounding various teams. And one of the interesting stories that you did tell me one time was an encounter with former Red Sox coach Terry Francona. Tell us that story.
Well, it was actually after the Red Sox had won the World Series. So Terry Francona was a hero in Boston. And the following year, they were playing in Kansas City in early April. And I happened to actually be living in Kansas at the time. So in Kansas City, their ballpark, they have a section that's called the Crown Seats. And I had a connection so that the Crown Seats were basically from dugout to dugout. And I always managed to get the seats right by the Red Sox dugout. So it was like absolute heaven for me for the Red Sox to come to Kansas City. And I'd be sitting basically just on the other side of the wall. So before the first game, I saw Terry and I said, congratulations on winning the World Series. I said, you made me upset with you in early April, but I've forgiven you now. So he looked at me and said, why did I make you mad in April? And I said, well, that's not important. He goes, no, I'd like to know. I said, well, there was 3 straight games against the Baltimore Orioles where the Red Sox had a 3-run lead. You took out Manny Ramirez for defensive purposes, and unfortunately we gave up the lead. And then in the 12th inning, when Manny would be batting, our 25th man was batting in his place, and we wound up losing the game. And he said to me, I didn't do that. I took out David Ortiz. And I said, no, you don't take out the designated hitter for defensive purposes. So he kind of shook his head and walked away from me and went to sit down on the bench. And then pitching coach Dave Wallace walked by him, and Terry looked up at me and goes, hey, and he goes, he made me do it. And I said, oh, you're taking substitution advice from the pitching coach for your defensive purposes. I don't think so. So he looks at me again, and then all of a sudden he bolts up off his bench and he comes up to me and goes, you think you're so smart. He goes, who was that 25th man last year? And I looked at him and said, Cesar Crespo. And his head just dropped. He just gave up. He was defeated. He was walking away. And I said, Terry, I may be in Kansas City, but I'm not.
Called him Terry.
So
not coach, not manager, not Mr. Francona. You called him Terry. And they didn't grab you by the arm and haul you out.
I was very polite. I mean, this was a friendly bantering back and forth.
Okay.
I mean, it started out with me congratulating him. So, I mean, I wasn't upset with him. But he's sitting on the bench, and I was waiting for one of the players that was going to, after warming up, he was going to sign a baseball for me. So when this player came into the dugout, it was actually Kurt Schilling. And as he was heading toward me, Terry stopped him. And Terry's pointing at me, and I see him talking to Kurt. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. He's telling him not to sign a ball from me. I couldn't believe it. So a few minutes later, Kurt comes walking over to me and he said, you had an argument with the skipper. And I said, well, I didn't mean to. He goes, I think it's funny. Give me a baseball.
So you have Kurt. You have a Kurt Schilling signed baseball.
I do. And Terry signed one for me that day as well.
So do you have a lot of memorabilia from various major leaguers that you have collected over the years?
A lot of baseballs. That's pretty much. I have. It's actually something that is very rare. I think actually came from a Red Sox player that I almost found it hard to like. It came from someone who was a former New York Yankee, and given my distaste for the New York Yankees, being a Red Sox fan, there was a game. There was a doubleheader played in April of 2002 between the Red Sox and the Royals. And it was a very miserable, cold, rainy April. And in the first game, the Red Sox they fell behind early 2-0, and they wound up coming back. And Johnny Damon hit a grand slam, and and he was playing for the Red Sox at the time, and they annihilated the Royals in the first game, 12-2. And then in the second game, they jumped out to an early lead. It was, I think, 8-2. And then all of a sudden, the wheels were just falling apart, and they were just giving up run after run after run. And I never, ever badmouth my Red Sox. I'm cheering them on. And they wound up winning. They gave up a home run in the ninth inning to Carlos Beltran, but they wound up winning 8-7. So after the game, and the doubleheader's over, and it's miserable out, I was getting ready to leave, and Mike Stanley, who is now a coach for the Red Sox, who had played for the Red Sox after coming from the Yankees, said to me, "Hey, wait a minute." And I couldn't understand why, because I honestly hadn't even talked to him. And he reached he went, kind of disappeared, and then he come out, and he's holding the lineup card that they post on the wall so the players know who's in the game and who's coming up and stuff, and handed it to me. He goes, "I have never, ever heard a fan never say anything bad to any of the players. We played lousy in the second game, barely hung on, and you did nothing but cheer us on like you were a proud parent." He goes, "If anybody deserves this, it's you." So he gave me the official lineup card that they used for the second game of the doubleheader on April 21st, 2002.
And you still have this?
Still have this,
wow.
Yes.
Incredible. And we're definitely going to have you back on another episode, because you just have so many stories, and I know we're just kind of rushing through a bunch of them, but this is an interesting story that you have that I'm going to ask about now, and this is one that might even interest Eric down there in Birmingham, Alabama, because you have a story about Papa Jack.
Yes.
Or Papa Jack.
Papa Jack, Ron Jackson, and he was actually born in Birmingham, Alabama. Oh wow!
So there's a connection. Yeah, he played. Let's see, on the Powderly Hill Little League team in Birmingham, Alabama, and he also went to Winona High School out there in Birmingham, Alabama, and went on to be a huge baseball player. And you can tell us your story. He spent, I think, 4 seasons with the Red Sox.
Right, he was a coach for the Red Sox.
The hitting coach, right?
Hitting coach, yes.
And he also had 2 brothers that played professional sport. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
His brother, one of his brothers, Demetrius, actually played football with your favorite football team, the Washington Redskins.
Okay.
And his brother Lawrence, who was also nicknamed Kenny, was drafted, and he played for the Chicago White Sox.
Oh, wow.
So, got some information that you didn't even know. But the internet is wonderful. Google is your friend. But tell us the Papa Jack story. This is interesting.
Well, I got to know Papa Jack because I said when the Red Sox would come to Kansas City, I would sit in the dugout right next to them. So, like, if I was in a cubicle, it was basically right there and right next to me. So I would talk to him when they would come, and I'd ask him for a job all the time. And he would joke with me and say, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Anything. Work for the Red Sox. Come on, hire me now." But so we got friendly that way. We'd talk in between games or between the doubleheader, and after a game we'd hang out and talk a little bit. So it was actually in 2003 I came home for a Red Sox Yankee game, and my wife, I had two tickets, and my wife did not want to go because it was, rumored that there could be some trouble with the Red Sox and the Yankees, and she didn't want to deal with any of that. So I asked a friend of mine to go, and we were in the Red Sox souvenir shop, and I hear my friend go, "Oh, there's the Red Sox coach, Ron Jackson." And I said, "Oh, my friend." And my friend says to me, "Yeah, you know Ron Jackson." So before I could say anything, my friend went up to Ron Jackson and said, "Hey, coach, my friend over here says he knows you." And Ron Jackson looks at him and goes, "Paul, how are you?" So I come over, we shake hands, we say hi, and he's like, "You got good seats?" And at the time I didn't. I said, "No, we have terrible seats, but that's all right, we're here." And he goes, "Well, not anymore, follow me." And he took us and improved my seats. And that happened to be the game that Pedro Martinez and Don Zimmer and Pedro got into a fight. So basically Don Zimmer charged Pedro and Pedro just threw him down. But that was the day that I met Ron Jackson at the game and gave us better seats, and we were on the third base side, so we saw Zimmer go across the field heading right for Pedro.
That was the year, the greatest comeback in history. Was that the same year?
No, that was 2004.
2004. Okay, he was named like Bo Sox. He was named like Bo Sox Man of the Year.
Yeah,
that year. Yeah, that was
2003. They got robbed in the playoffs against the Yankees. So.
Well, we were used to that, weren't we? Getting robbed, getting robbed in the playoffs. So you were a sports writer for, was it a local newspaper in Lynn, Massachusetts?
Yes, it was a weekly paper called the Lynn Sunday Post.
And you, I'm assuming you wrote on Major League sports as well as local sports, or?
Yes, I covered Boston Red Sox games. In fact, I actually wrote the story when the Red Sox won the pennant in 1986. Covered Boston Celtic games, and I had the first local professional wrestling column. And then it was so popular that the Boston Herald picked it up and started doing one.
You used to write for the Boston Herald?
No, the Boston Herald picked it up. They started doing a column because they saw that our column was popular. So they started doing their own column.
I was a fan of professional wrestling when I was very young. I used to go to the Garden, take the train in, and for like $9 you could get ringside seats and see. Of course, I'm going back to Chief Jay Strongbow and superstar Billy Graham, I think, was the champion at the time, and Bob Backlund was the champion at the time. So yeah, that was a group of us friends would always take the train into Boston and see the wrestling matches every month.
In fact, I think one of the first times you learned not to doubt me is when I told you on April 30th, 1977, that superstar Billy Graham lost the WWE Championship.
Yeah, you're for our listeners, Paul is a man of numbers. I mean, it's incredible how he just hanged. I can't remember my own birthday, let alone some of the dates that you have learned. Talk a little bit about. I want to get into our Red Sox story before we finish this episode, or our trip to the Red Sox episode before we finish. But let's talk about the upcoming 2021 season. I mean, we've gone through this terrible pandemic, and the Red Sox have made some changes as of late. We've traded some guys away. Dustin Pedroia retired. And you follow this like religiously. So what do you think? How do the Red Sox look for 2021?
Well, I know they're trying to sell the fact that they're very high on this team, and if you listen carefully to how they word it, they say, well, nobody should fall asleep on the Red Sox. We think we have a chance to be a very good team. They traded away their best player last year. They traded away another good player this year. They haven't improved their pitching. They still have some injuries with Chris Sale. I would love to hope I'm wrong, but I do not see it being a much better year than it was last year.
There you have it, folks. He is predicting no playoff. Are you predicting no playoffs at all for the Red Sox in 2021?
Well,
because
I don't know.
They didn't get to. It was kind of a weird season, but they wouldn't have made the playoffs in 2020.
No, they finished in dead last last year.
From like first to worst, right, or something.
Yeah. So unless they expand the playoffs include a lot of teams. I don't see them.
It's tough being a Red Sox fan. I mean, we suffered. My father, when he was alive, never saw a Red Sox championship. I mean,
my father didn't either.
86 years of heartbreak and anger and everything else, and he never, in his 60 years, never saw a Red Sox championship. And I've seen 4.
Well, if you think about kids today, born in 2000, between all the major sports here, the riches that they've had compared to what we've experienced before that, with the Bruins, the Patriots, the Red Sox, and the Celtics.
That's true.
It's like, I mean, from 1987 into 2007, the Celtics didn't win again until 2008.
Yeah, we live in it's been an interesting generation, sports generation.
Yes.
So
I was hoping they would hire Jason Varitek, and I have a very funny Jason Varitek story eventually, but I was hoping that he would get the job, but I understand why they gave it back to Alex Cora. So.
Okay. Well, that's something we can have the next time we have you on for your second appearance on our show, and you just have so many stories. It's just just sitting down and and listening to you tell these stories, whether we're waiting in line in the pouring rain to go to a Red Sox game to pick up a World Series ring, or we're sitting having dinner or something. It's just incredible that something will trigger a story, and you just have these incredible stories that I think our audience is always interested in especially when it comes to major league players and celebrities and things like that. And we're going to save the Johnny Cash story for the next episode. So yeah, there's just so many stories. But I think what had to have been. I look back on it now and laugh, and we weren't laughing at the time that all of this was going on. But with the 2019 season, before the pandemic,
yes,
the Red Sox ran a promotion. And it was basically if you bought a package of games, I think it was 4 games, that these particular select games, you would go, if you got there and you were one of the first however many thousand people, they were handing out World Series replica rings. And these things were really, minus the diamonds, they were the real ring. And heavy, nice metallic ring. And, of course, you wanted to do this, and you for every ticket, you could get a ring. And, of course, being Red Sox fans, and I'm a huge fan, love Fenway Park, we decided, let's go. And I don't know the order in which all of this occurred, but I do remember one time standing in the absolute pouring rain, trying to get in to get this ring, and I believe we went in. Did we not grab the third game? Did we not grab the ring that they gave us and walked right out the back door back to the subway and went home?
Yes, because they told us they didn't even think the game was going to get played.
Which it did.
Which it did get played eventually.
And then there was the episode the time we went. Beautiful day. I said, this is the one. This is finally, we got a good game. Because it either rained or it was freezing. I remember there was an April game where we froze our butts off.
Yes, that one we didn't last long. And then the second game you actually couldn't make. But yes, the fourth game was the beautiful day.
And that was, and I said, oh, finally. I don't know if it was June, July, August, whatever it was. It was a beautiful day. And we go in and we get the ring. We sit down at the seats and there's water dripping from the ceiling at Fenway Park, and they informed us that it was some sort of sewer pipe or something that was dripping on us, and there wasn't really a whole bunch of places we could move to, and
No.
it was like this is just what happened when I go out and travel to different things with people. It becomes this whole Disaster Jerry thing.
But that was just the start of the disaster.
Well, yeah, and then of course there was a group that sat in front of us or next to us who had a little too much to drink. And we won't get too graphic on the episode here, but let's just say clean up on aisle 2 And I just had, all we could do at that point, right, was all we could do was laugh and go, you got to be kidding me. We've tried this 3 times out of the 4 that we went to this thing. And every time it either rained, it was freezing, people were barfing all over the place, and we were getting leaked on by sewage. So
in that last game, we had 6 people taken out by ambulance.
Oh, and that's right, because of the heat.
Right.
And other issues. And that's
after
right.
After the last incident, let's just say that you were the only one willing to stay. I was more than willing to leave.
Listen, I hadn't seen a game all year where I stayed for the whole game, and I said, darn it, if I'm not leaving. If the ceiling could have collapsed, and if they were playing, I was staying. And that you're right, because I mean, I enjoy it. I loved Fenway Park. It's as old as it is, and no matter what they try to do, sometimes it's like putting perfume on a pig, but it's still the greatest ballpark in the league, and I've traveled to many of them, and we'll probably share those stories with our listeners in the future. But so we've decided that Paul and I can never go together to a Red Sox game. We're going to try maybe go to the same game but separately, and we'll see what happens. Paul, it's been great having you on the show. Thank you so much. Let me remind folks, if you are interested in picking up a copy of the book that Paul authored here, The History of the Lynn City Series, 1951 to 2016, all proceeds, 100% of the proceeds, go to the charity. Paul, the charity again?
It's the Lynn Shore Little League.
Lynn Shore Little League. You can email Paul at phyaz08@aol.com. That's phyaz08@aol.com. Pick up a copy of the book. If you want to make a contribution to the Lynn City Little League, that's how you can do it. So many stories left to tell, Paul. Would love to have you back. I hope you'll come back. You're welcome to come back anytime. We can talk about the other Major League Baseball stories that you have. We can talk about your Johnny Cash encounter and a few other things as well. So thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I really had a good time.
Alrighty, folks. Eric, we missed you, buddy, and looking forward to you getting back on the air as quickly as possible, because I can't do this alone. Good show. Roll Tide. It's Another Sunday Podcast is produced by Eric and Jerry. Technical advisor is Tom Bilodeau. Music composed and performed by Tom Blaze. Check out Tom Blaze's YouTube channel. Special thanks to our guest, Paul Hartford. That's the end of another episode of It's Another Sunday Podcast. Thanks for listening.